Good evening, I'm Catherine Clavana. Welcome to Your Community, Your Call, a live program about homeowner and condominium association issues. This evening, we're going to explore ways in which communities can create a more inclusive and responsive neighborhood. Our panel of experts is here to answer your questions. You can phone in your questions to 703-818-1445 or email them to ycyc@fairfaxcounty.gov. We'll take as many of your calls and emails as possible. Here to get us started is Michelle Thompson, the Fairfax County Homeowner and Condominium Association Liaison and a consumer specialist with the county's Consumer Affairs Branch. Michelle, what do we have in store tonight?
Good evening, Catherine. I'm excited about tonight's conversation. We're going to talk about what does building community look like? What are some of the best practices that are going on in other communities that our audience can apply? When I talk to people on the telephone, a lot of what I hear is some type of miscommunication or lack of information. So there are like 4 areas we're going to cover this evening. We're going to talk about how can communities build effective communication so that the members can understand what the expectations are. Where can they find that type of information? We're going to talk about rules and regulations and enforcing those on a consistent basis and how that can go a long way in building community. When we think about building, I don't think it's just you, the individual people, but it is actually a policy. Then this really probably is the first time you get them engaged with going back to read their documents.
So are there other remedies like that that are available to boards to encourage compliance?
Well, we mentioned making notes in the welcome packets, the bullets about the most frequently violated concerns. And newsletters will do that. Hey, these are the complaints we're getting, or these are some of the violations we're seeing. Just a reminder that rule such and such says this, you know, about washing your car in the common area or something like that. That's a very friendly way to keep people up to date about the rules and violations.
Well, and I also think it's really important to make certain that your residents and your owners buy into the reason for the rules. Yes. You know, there's a purpose behind them, and which is to protect property values. I mean, this is your greatest investment. For most of us, it's our greatest investment. It's your home, and you want to make certain that it retains its value. That's what the purpose of restrictive covenants and rules are. So if you can convince people we're not doing this just because we arbitrarily thought it would be fun to make your life difficult, but that this is the way we make sure everybody's rules, if everybody's front porch is painted properly and nobody's got peeling paint, everybody's house looks better.
Right.
And potential buyers are riding through the neighborhoods, and they're making decisions on how this neighbor over here is maintaining their home. It could be 2 or 3 homes that could just totally block out a whole neighborhood for a potential buyer.
Definitely.
And it really makes the difference when you're ready to sell your home and you want people to come through.
Well, here's an interesting email from Bill. I just received a notice for a rules violation. However, my neighbor has the same issue and he has not received a notice. I feel like the board is picking on me. What recourse do I have?
I would say, first of all, let's start off with, let's focus on ourselves and see what we can do to comply with what we have to do here. You know, if the board is doing what they're supposed to do, you're not supposed to know what the status is of the neighbor because it's supposed to be a private issue being handled by the board and that individual, just like you would want your issue to be handled privately. So they may be working with the neighbor just may not be telling you. The other thing is there's information that tells you what to do in the letter, who to contact if you have questions or concerns, or if it's gone along or further down the line, who else to contact. Maybe you have to contact the attorney. Use those numbers. Open up the conversation. There should be the opportunity. The first notice is telling you that there's a violation. These are the potential actions that can be taken if you don't comply. If there's a concern with you being able to comply within the time frame, start right there. You know, we always want to find someone else to go to about a complaint, but start with your association board or your management company to see what you can do to work with them. If you need more time, they need to know that. I guess you can, what options do you have for people who may need new time?
Yeah, I mean, the goal, as we just said, is to gain compliance and for everybody to follow the rules. So people are always, the boards are always willing to work with homeowners, managers are always willing to work with homeowners. So if you're going to be out of town and you can't take care of something, or there's some financial burden, or whatever the situation may be, reach out and communicate and let people know, hey, I need 30 more days, or I need 10 more days, because the end goal is just to gain your compliance.
So Marla, following up on that, does the law require that the association board give the owner an opportunity to present evidence, you know, in response to the notice of violation?
Not evidence per se. What the law requires is that before the association takes certain action after giving you an initial opportunity to rectify the problem, is before they take any further action, be suspending your privileges, imposing charges, something along those lines, they have to give you the opportunity for a hearing. And that doesn't necessarily mean an evidentiary hearing as we would think about it. It's not a trial, it's nothing along those lines. More often than not, it's a fairly informal process where the person has a chance to come with counsel, if they want it, to the board of directors to explain their side of the story. If there's a reason that they're out of compliance, if they think they aren't out of compliance. But it's really just an opportunity for them to say that to the board of directors. It's not really an evidentiary, unless your own due process procedures provide for that, but that's extremely rare. So
I have a question on that. I actually had someone come in the office last week. He had a hearing held, so he wasn't in compliance. He had a hearing held, and they ruled against him that he was still out of compliance, and he fixed it that day. They assessed charges for him for the penalty from the original notice date. So he was concerned because he thought that having the hearing, that if anything would have happened, that charges wouldn't have been applied till afterwards. Is there anything that speaks to that, any law that speaks to how, when penalties should be assessed?
there is.
Okay.
That is not an uncommon practice, but it's one that I will tell you I recommend my clients against, because the statute says before the imposition of a suspension or charges, the owner will be given an opportunity for a hearing. So my position is that you cannot impose a suspension or charges until you've held the hearing. So yeah, that I'm not unfamiliar with associations that do that, but it's something I wouldn't recommend them to do because I don't think they're in compliance with the statute.
Okay, thank you for that.
Well, let's move on to social activities, talk about some fun. Michelle, when we talk about building community, you know, we think about social activities that bring people together. What should communities consider when planning social activities?
You know, communities have to consider who their audience is. And maybe the audience has changed over the years. So we came in when we were 30 with our young families, and now we're 50. You know, the activities I might be excited about participating in when I'm 30 or might be a little bit more different than when I'm 50. Or my children now have grown older. Are we creating opportunities for everyone in the community to engage? Can you do that at every event? Maybe not, but you could have certain events for the teens, and you could have, maybe instead of having the dances for the adults, now you have a more senior population. Maybe they are interested in something a little bit more education. I'm getting ready to go into retirement. What do I need to know? Are there some resources you can bring in that will educate me about a topic of concern for this season of my life? So I think just to keep in mind that your community is made of different generations of people. What are we doing to make sure that we're keeping everyone engaged? And maybe get some feedback. What is it that you'd like to see going on? And try to get some feedback from the community about what they would participate in. What has been successful in some of your communities, Victoria?
You know, some of the go-tos are always a pool party, community yard sale. Those are always things that drive people out right away. But I have some communities that do some really neat things. A progressive dinner. You go from home to home, having a little bite to eat. Neat. It's, you know, no cost to the community. Those homeowners who are opening their door, those homeowners pay for everything. You know, just a little appetizer or something like that, and it keeps people kind of moving and meeting their neighbors. So that's a really neat one that I've seen communities do.
I haven't heard that before.
It's very cool.
I want to jump to an email that we've had from Rebecca. I know of a community association that's lapsed, and some members of that community would like to get it back up and running. What advice can you share?
This is a very complex question. It's not one that's an easy one to really answer. The first thing I think, usually when a community association has lapsed, it's because you have a lack of interest from your owners in the community.
Right.
So the first thing is always going to be getting people interested in getting the community association up and going again. There's going to be some legal ramifications to the lapse, and so you're going to want to take a careful look at if you're a corporation, your corporate status, property ownership issues, things like that you're going to want to take a look at. And it probably is a good opportunity to talk to a lawyer and see what you need to do to get it restarted, so that you're not going to run into trouble when you start doing things like collecting assessments and enforcing rules. So
it takes a lot of energy because there's probably going to be a couple of people who are interested in reinstating the association and getting the community re-engaged. So there's going to be that core group that will have to do some type of education about what it is they think they're talking again to get the buy-in and see what that interest really is. But it is something that's going to take time, and so it's not going to happen overnight. But you just have to have a strong heart for that. It's not for the faint of heart.
Well, how can communities create a sense of belonging to the greater community?
There are a lot of communities that sponsor community sports leagues, and so I know in our community we have a field, so a lot of the different sports will come out and use the field for that. Also, you could take on the possibility of being available to the community. So we have a school in our community, and then during Christmas time we'll get information about being able to help students who go to the school have a Christmas. And so neighbors will be able to donate and bring things in for that particular opportunity. So not only are you helping families within your community, but you're getting a wider reputation for being able to do good and do things as well. There's a program that we have with the county where there's a grant funding opportunity, and it's the Neighborhood Enhancement Partnership Program. So communities can actually apply for $5,000 that will allow them to do some type of community enhancement. What that does as far as building community is that the group comes together to create the proposal for the grant, and then if awarded, they work together to actually either build a fountain or build a little walk path or update the toddler tot or something like that. So that's another way to engage in community. And I know different organizations have different awards for recognizing outstanding communities.
Yeah, Community Association Institute, they have, the Washington Metro chapter has a competition every year for Community of the Year. So if your community is a member, then you can participate in that, and you get a plaque, and you get recognized in the local magazine, and it really is quite the big deal. So.
Do your communities ever use like listservs where they are directly sharing information in their community, such as you would have on like a school listserv, or I know different neighborhoods have listservs, but is that something that often comes up, or is it more kind of the community bulletin board or sharing information through the website, through the owners section of a website?
A lot of the communities have where they do email blasts within the community of sharing information. So if there was a local organization requesting donations, you might see that blasted out to all of the members.
Another opportunity we talked about engaging young people, Washington Metropolitan Chapter of Community Associations Institute is hosting a scholarship opportunity for high school seniors. And so they can win $500 if they do a video or an essay about what their community means to them. And I think this is great because ultimately they're going to grow up in a couple more years and they'll be purchasing a home in the community, so that they have some type of interaction or some memory of being engaged in the community. They'll bring that experience to the new community as become involved in the board, or if they volunteered some type of way. So there are quite a different ways that the community can have a greater presence. And I think when you have a greater presence and you hear your community acknowledged outside of the gates that you live in, that brings you all a sense of pride that brings you all together as well.
There's probably, you mentioned young people, there's probably a way to do SSL hours too, student service learning hours. I know my son's high school, there's a certain amount of hours they have to complete by the end of high school. But there's probably projects you could bring together young people in your community to work on a certain task or project.
That's a great opportunity because they do have the service hours, and there's plenty of communities. I know our community does a lot of that as well, and we'll post it here. We're doing this event this weekend. It's an opportunity for service hours, and a lot of time all that is just someone of authority signing off on the form that the student will bring. So it's not a big deal to create this opportunity and have the student get credit for it.
Yeah, I mean, it's great for a lot of communities like to do once a year a community cleanup day where they go along the wooded areas and they pick up the trash and debris, and we see a lot of times Boy Scouts participate in that, and the high schoolers, so that's a great way to involve them as well.
Great. Well, Marla, any final legal thoughts that you want to share?
Any legal thoughts? Well, you know, one of the things that I think, from my perspective, my job is to make certain, help associations avoid risk and help them avoid trouble. And I think one of the themes that we've had this evening is one of the best ways that you can keep your association out from having trouble, and that's making certain that you're communicating within that association, that your board of directors is talking to your membership, and then your membership is talking to the board of directors, because that kind of openness and transparency is going to make certain that the board is truly responding to the concerns of the community, and it's going to make certain that the community trusts its board of directors. And that's just going to help you have a better community and one that's less likely to run into trouble, in which case you need to talk to me.
And what about building a better sense of community? Any final thoughts on that?
You know, again, just stay engaged. As a homeowner, stay engaged with the board. As the board, stay engaged with the homeowner. A lot of times communities will say, well, you know, maybe hosting a pool party is expensive and we don't have the funds for that. We don't want to raise assessments just to have social events. Reach out to the contractors that work in the community. If you have a grounds company that's been there for 5 or 10 years, maybe they can pitch in and help with that party. Maybe they can sponsor a raffle at an annual meeting to help encourage participation and people to come out. So
great. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. If you'd like to watch this program again, Your Community, Your Call is replayed every Monday night at 8 p.m. right here on Channel 16. You can also watch the show online anytime. Go to the Channel 16 website at www.fairfaxcounty.gov/cable. Select Channel 16 programs, scroll down to Your Community, Your Call. Be sure to tune in to Channel 16 on July 15th for our next exciting program. I'd like to thank tonight's guests, Marla Diaz, Victoria Garner, and Michelle Thompson for joining us for your expertise and knowledge. It was a lot of fun.
thank you.
And thanks to you for watching and participating in Your Community, Your Call. I'm Catherine Clavana. Good night.